Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we finally made it. We are on the final book in the Tell Me series by Charlotte Byrd. Now, if you haven't listened to the first 5 books in this series reviews, those links are going to be available down below in the description section. Once you finish up with those, come and join us as we dive into the final book, Book 6, Tell Me to Lie. We pick right back up where we left off in the last book, which is Nicholas is now in the back of a police car. He's going back and forth with the feeling of Olive has potentially really betrayed him, and it feels absolutely crushing. He thinks that, you know, maybe she didn't do it, so he's going back and forth with she did, she didn't. Um, he doesn't believe it's possible for her to have traveled all that way and not notice that someone was following her. So he's like, it's gotta be she led him to me. And it's just a really hard thing for him to even have to think and to even accept. Po boy. So they get him down to the police station. The FBI agents come in. They do the whole good cop, bad cop thing. Doesn't work. Um, he asked for a lawyer, and then they sent in a third agent. And yes, it is our boy, Art Hedison. He is shocked to see Art. Um, he knows that Art was brought in to break him, because the other 2 agents haven't been able to. Art's telling him, if you tell me what really happened, I can help you. I know you didn't do it. But Nicholas sticks to his guns. He's like, I want a lawyer. Art's like, once, you get an attorney, like, there's no way I can help you. And Nicholas just says, I know my rights, and that's what I want. And he's like, I told the cops on the way over here. I told the first 2 agents, and now I'm telling you again, I want my lawyer. We switch to Olive. Olive goes into a complete state of shock as everything's happening. When Nicholas gets arrested, she's trying to see him, but there's so many people out there, she's not able to. Eventually, they get some clothes on her, and they have her go down to the station. She has her kitten Solly, and it actually calms her down because she's freaking out on the inside. So she knows she's got to say she doesn't know anything for the most part, and really she doesn't know about the stuff that that they are picking him up on, right? She really doesn't know about that stuff. Art comes in. He tries to get her to, you know, he wants to break her too. But she holds her ground. She asks for a lawyer, and she says, honestly, if I'm not arrested, I'm leaving because I don't have anything to do with this. You know, she says, you all don't have the right guy. He's not capable of this type of stuff. And so she leaves, and no one comes after her. Olive decides she's going to go home, so she catches a flight back to Boston, knocks on the door. Sydney's there, but guess who else is there? James and Sydney's mother. So she thought it would be rude to just go to her room. So she winds up staying with them, having dinner, dessert, coffee, and everything. And then she goes to her room, and then Sydney comes in. And Sydney, of course, she thinks that Nicholas, he did this. And Olive, of course, is like, I don't believe it. And I'm going to prove it. I don't know how. And so then she asked Sydney, I thought you broke up with him. And she just says, well, he begged me to take him back. She's like, okay, so you give him? And she said, well, my mom came over and I didn't want to tell her what happened because I knew my mom was going to just blame me. So Olive is doing the whole, but he cheated on you. Like, he's the bad person. And Sydney's like, she's not going to see it like that. She's going to say, what did I do to make him cheat? She's going to put it on me. And there's no getting around it. And so apparently the wedding is back on for the 2 of them. Um, At that point, Olive doesn't try and, say anything else. Because they're at this point, if a decision's been made, then that's what the decision is. Um, she doesn't want to make any waves with her mother, so this is what she's going to do. I'm not going to say you deserve better if you're going to choose to accept the less, right? That's a choice. So if this is what you're going to do, then okay. Then that's what you do. The next morning, her and Sydney really don't talk at first, and then they start talking about Nicholas. Sydney calls her a fool, says, basically you're setting yourself up to be like one of those prison wives. And she's like, even if he didn't do it, it might not still be enough to get him off. And she's like, what are you going to do then? She's like, I love him. I need to find out the truth. Honestly, for myself as well. If he did these horrible things, then I can let him go. But I need to find it out. So still, Sydney's still on that, on the BS. I would have told Sydney, you stupid too for living your life for other people, you know? But hey, we make choices. But you see how easy it is for someone who's making some bullshit choice. It's easy for her to call Olive stupid. This is why I get upset with the people kind of in Olive's circle that she holds so dear to her heart. Because they real quick to fucking call you stupid and dumb. Real fucking quick. And they got a lot of shit going on. A lot. So I was like, that's, if I was Olive, that's what I would have said to Sydney. If I'm stupid, you're dumber because you're living your life for other people and you're miserable. You want to talk about that? That's how you shut people down like that, because they know you, when they know you care, they know you love them. There's a certain way they treat you. And it's almost like this boldness. It's like you're not bold enough over there, but you want to be bold over here with me. Fuck that. Nah, we ain't playing them games, I would have went off on Sydney. Like, for real, for real. So she decides to look up Nicholas's mother. And she finds out that she stays in a really nice part of Cambridge. So she goes to see. And at first she pissed me off because when she gets up there, she's acting all fucking stupid, acting like she know how to talk. So eventually the woman's just kind of like, okay, if you're not going to say nothing, I'm going to have to tell you to get the hell out of my house. Finally, she starts talking to the mom, tell her, basically she's trying to get in contact with his old buddies, Nicholas's old buddies. The mom is pissed because this place is a rental. And so is the BMW that's outside that he got for her. It's all a lease. And it hasn't been paid in the last 2 months, her rent. So she's about to get evicted. Okay? She says, if he really wanted me to have these things, he would have just bought it for me outright. But we already know she's a horrible person based on how she treated her daughter. So this is not shocking behavior, but it kind of also shows how I thought he had just kind of left his mother alone, like knew she was awful and left her alone. But you see the bond that he clearly has with Olive, with the whole still trying to please someone that's a parent that you can never please, You see that here. Like, he's still been trying to do right by her and she's never deserved it. So again, we're not shocked. Olive is like, if I can get him out of jail, then, maybe he'll start paying your stuff again. Well, this, perks her up. And so she tells her the spot, the clubhouse where they all hang out. And she's like, that's a wolf den, I don't know if you want to go in there, but if you do, more power to you. After she leaves from the mother's house, she had thought about saying something about Ashley, but she didn't want to stir up anything because she very well may need to ask this woman for more information in the future. But she does want to tell the woman off about all the stuff she did to Ashley. So she goes home and she's trying to scope out the place via online with Google Maps. and she realizes, she can't bring anyone with her. She needs a gun. So she goes down a rabbit hole online about how to get one, without it getting traced back to you, all this type of stuff. She's on all these different forums. And she meets some guy, I think at like a coffee shop. She buys a gun. She's freaking out because she's like, oh my gosh, I might possibly have to use this pretty damn soon. So she winds up going to a gun range, shooting good enough to the point to where at least it didn't hit the bullseye, but it hit the body. So now she thinks she's ready to go to the clubhouse. So she goes in there. Of course, they're like, who are you? And they wind up pushing her down the hall. She takes her gun out and she's like, where's Ricky Trondell? The guys are like, who? And she's like, where's Ricky Trondell? So she winds up pushing the guy now back into another room where a bunch of folks are. They all draw their guns, and then the big boss tells them to lower them. He wants to know who she is, who she's looking for. She gives her name, and she says again who she's looking for. And the guy wants to know, he's, one of the guys is kind of like, are you a cop? She's like, no, I'm not law enforcement. She's like, I just got some questions, and the head dude is like, okay, well then you need to start talking like now. She tells them she's here about Nicholas Crawford. They're like, well, damn, we haven't heard that name in so long. And then they're like, he's getting what he deserves. And the boss man is like, he didn't do right by us. She's like, I don't know what he did. I don't know anything about that. I don't want to know anything about that. I'm just trying to get information. And the guy says, no, you're not. You're trying to get information that could exonerate him. So they don't give her any help. She yells out the name Ricky Trondell again, but no one comes forward. But one of the guys looks like, how when someone in school they would call your name, but the person doesn't want to say that it's them. One guy has that look on his face, and so she decides that's probably him. So she leaves because she had taken a bus to get there. So she goes back home, gets her vehicle, comes back, and she waits outside. Finally, the guy who she thinks is Ricky comes out and she follows him to the suburbs. He lives like 45 minutes outside of the city. She sees him go in and she's now thinking like, okay, am I even going to be able to get to him? She doesn't know if this is his actual home, if he's on a job. So, she's doing her normal. She's starting to spiral. After waiting outside for about 2 hours, she finally decides to go up. She knocks on the door. She hears a dog, and then she hears a crying baby. Woman comes to the door, and it's like, we're not buying anything. She's like, no, I'm not trying to sell you anything. The woman's like, we're not converting either. The woman looks so tired. She looks so exhausted, and she says, I need to talk to Ricky. The woman flipped her shit. She's like, how dare you come here? So she thinks Olive is someone that Ricky done knocked up. So I guess Ricky got a girl knocked up, and she thinks the woman's that Olive's that girl, and she's coming there asking for money. So she's like, no, I'll just have some questions. The woman slams the door in her face. So then the door opens again. It's Ricky. He's like, why did you follow me? She's like, I just got a couple questions to ask you. He's like, you gotta leave. You gotta go. So he slams the door in her face again. She goes downstairs. She feels defeated. She sits in the car. And then she's thinking like, did I really try hard enough? So she stays in the car and winds up falling asleep. There's a knock on the window. It's Ricky. They have their conversation because he tells her, you are persistent. So he knows that Nicholas didn't commit the murder of his partner and best friend David because Nicholas was with him. Ricky had robbed a liquor store and he was being hunted for. So he and Ricky, he stayed with Ricky the whole night. And he says that when he heard David was dead, Nicholas, really took it awful. He kept going like, wow, like why would someone kill someone over money? It's not that important. Nicholas never had the concept of money the way that, gang people, mafia, however you want to put, organized crime. He never had that thought process the way they did. They would do anything for it. They were willing to kill for it. He wasn't. That's why he was so good at doing the insurance scams with the fires, because he could make sure nobody was inside, no one could get hurt. And he could get a lot of money for it. And because he didn't like to hurt people, like, they already knew that's just not who he was. So Ricky knows that the reason why Art turned on him is because Internal Affairs got a case on him, and Art had to give him something, right? Um, he says that the ex-girlfriend, them trying to put that on him as well, they're trying to like make this out to be like a possible serial killer, right? He killed his best friend, he killed his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. They're trying to set it up as a serial killer because that sounds sexy, right? In news media, that's a good story. So she's just kind of like, what am I supposed to do? He says, I don't know, but good luck. And we never had this conversation. We switch back to Nicholas. Poor Nicholas. He gets beat up. He gets RAPED'd really bad from multiple folks. He's now in the infirmary. He hears the nurse talking about him, and one's like, he's not going to make it to trial. Like, I think they're going to try and shank him before, because he's too famous in the FBI world. He's like the most wanted. So he tried to think of good thoughts, and he thinks of a life with Olive, even though he believes she turned him in. He forgives her, and he wants to prove that he didn't do the stuff that he's been accused of. He thinks about a life where they have a little boy. She's there. There's just happiness. It's just bliss. So that's what he has created in his mind as his happy space. So we switch back to Olive, and she, of course, has decided, you know what, maybe if I can figure out who killed Owen's girlfriend, then maybe I can figure out who killed David too. So then she decides she's going to go see her mother. So she got the same issues as Sydney. The very few glimpses of love that they receive, it's like that's what they hold on to keep going back. And so she figures her mother will have more answers for her. So that's why she's going to go over there. Her mother starts doing some rant about a tree with the neighbor, all this type of crap. And then eventually she asked about Owen's girlfriend. What was the name? It's going to come to me later. I can't think of it right now. um, she is like, pretty much, do you know anything about, Owen's ex-girlfriend? And the mother just says, oh, the one that your boyfriend killed? And then the mother says, I want to know more about what happened in California. She knows with her mother, she's got to give something if she wants to get something from her. So she winds up telling her, what happened, in California. And then when she brought up Owen's ex-girlfriend, she says, he was just like so in love with her. He would stalk her, and he knew that Nicholas was bad news, and that's why he was stalking her. And I'm just kind of like, this sounds very familiar, right? This shit sounds like his excuses for being overprotective with her when it came to Nicholas, right? And he stalked her, showed up at her real mother's home, had a gun pointed to her. I'm like, you know what? I think it was Owen. I don't know yet. I'm still reading through it, but I'm like, I think this might have been Owen, because this is a pattern of behavior. So then Olive, after Olive had told her mom what he had done, she says, you always did like being so dramatic. After that girl told her he almost raped her, pulled a gun on her, tried to kill her, that's what she says to her. But again, I'm not shocked. This woman could care less about you. That's the part that is why it's not difficult for me to understand it, because it's like this person doesn't care. So let's be honest, Owen's her child, not you, in her mind. So why would she have any sympathy for you, even when Owen is in the wrong? She's not. So she also asked her about finding her real mom, and she had asked her, Olive did, like, why did you never tell me? And the mother goes, because I wanted you to respect me. And I knew if you knew that I wasn't your real mom that you were going to do that. I'm like, that's a bunch of crap. Um, Olive lets her know how wonderful of a mother Josephine is. And that pisses off the mother. And she goes, well, why did she give you up? She said she didn't. Her dad did it when she had an emergency C-section. And he paid you very well. Then the mama gets this shocked look on her face. And, says something about, well, there was someone named Pink Eye who was best friends with Owen. I don't know his real name, but apparently he wasn't there the night that he got arrested. So now she's kind of wondering, well, who is this Pink Eye guy? And I wonder if this is the person that actually committed these crimes. Olive goes with Sydney to her dress fitting. Um, she finds one that she, really loves. While she was changing, Olive, sent him, was looking through Facebook trying to find if someone knew who this Pinky guy was. So she's like on Owen's page looking at his friends, like trying to find out if anyone knew who Pink Eye was. And she sends out a message, and so she's waiting to hear back. And she had asked Sydney, no, Sydney had asked, should I bring my mother here, and she's just kind of like, well, why would you do that? It's just going to ruin it, you know? And when she found the dress that she really loved, normally I guess the normal response is like a tear or this like complete joy of happiness because you found the dress, right? But Sydney didn't have that feeling, but it's because Sydney's making a choice. Not about a life of happiness, it's about a life for another reason. So you ain't gonna get that. So the dress was like 10 grand. It was a Vera Wang. She put it on her American Express. Um, One of Owen's friends reaches out, says he knows Pink Eye's real name uh, is Robert Bortham, but he doesn't know where he currently is. But that is, they just know his real name. So now she's like, okay, who the hell is this person? So Olive texts Sydney and asks her out for lunch. And they're talking at first, but not about too much of anything. And then Olive, of course, blurts out, how's it going with James? And Sydney just shrugs. And Olive's like, I don't understand what's going on, because the last time we talked, he cheated on you. Like, that was a big deal. And Sydney gets pissed. She's like, you're telling me that if Nicholas cheated on you, you would never forgive him? And she said, no, I wouldn't. That's a deal breaker for me. So then Sydney goes in and she says that she has to marry James because her mother will cut her off from not only supporting her now, but also from her will. And Olive's like, but you have a good job. She's like, no, I got fired from that job. She's like, well, you could get another one. And Sydney snaps at her, starts yelling. She says, basically, look at what you did for that little bit of money. She's like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about millions. So then the waitress comes over because she's, hollering, making a scene, and tells Sydney she has to leave. Um, Olive gets a text message. She's been looking up the Robert Bortham guy. She gets a hit, find out there's this doctor with a family that lives in Maine. He's the only person that's around the age that matched, that kind of, that matches um, who could possibly be Pink Eye. And so she sends a text to her mom asking, with a picture of this person saying, is this him? The mother sends back, yep, that's him. So she goes outside. Sydney hugs her and she's like, I'm so sorry. And then Sydney tells her, I'm pregnant. Now I'm going to go off on both Olive and Sydney, okay? For Olive, for you to tell her, oh, you could just get another job. I don't think that's your right to tell her, okay? At the same time, it's fucked up for Sydney to be like, look at what you did for that little bit of money, right? That's my problem with Sydney. It's those are digs. And I don't like it, because why would you feel the need to say that to her? Let's be very clear. You used what she went to do for your own adventure, and this is why you got caught up in the bullshit that you in. Let's just be honest, right? So you telling her that little bit of money, like, no, for her that was life-changing money. So how dare you belittle it? So you have this awful parent and she controls you with money. That's how she control, like, that's the control method, right? And yet you haven't done anything to get yourself from underneath that bullshit. So to me, you like it. So I don't feel sorry for her either. But I didn't like how she said that to Olive, just kind of like, you talking about, like, pretty much going like, you talking about chump change and I'm talking about real money, millions of dollars. That's fine. So then this is where, on Sydney's part, stop trying to tell her what she can and what she shouldn't do. Fuck it. Let her make her decision, and that's what it is. You're trying to talk her out of something that she's decided to do. Your reasons are your reasons, okay? That's your life. Those are your reasons. Do what you do. But what would make me not care is the fact that she said that little, oh, this isn't like the chump change that you did what you did for it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't like that. That made me, I'm not a big fan of Sydney either, because I feel like, again, it's that same, they do those digs at Olive, and Olive gets on my nerves. I'm starting not to be as mad at her anymore. Because I like her for like the last two books. But I'm starting not to be as mad at Olive. And I feel like Sydney, she's ungrateful of how good a friend Olive really is to her. Because Olive views her as family. And you can see, like, the family that she had, they treat her like shit. She still treated them like gold, you know? So that's the one thing I never liked. You get bad treatment from your mammy, but yet the person that treats you good and thinks highly of you, you want to talk to her like she's shit. I don't like that. So Sydney's on my shit list too now. They get back to the apartment, put on their PJs. Olive decides she's not going to push Sydney, but Sydney's kind of like, you're not going to ask me nothing? And she's like, well, I don't want to push you. And Sydney's like, push me. So she found, the day that she found out he was cheating on her, when she walked in on him, that was also the day that she found out she was pregnant. She was on the phone with her mom joking about if she had broke up with James, and that's when her mom said, if you break up with him, I'm cutting you off and you're getting cut out of the will. So Olive's like, that is just so messed up. You don't even love him. She said, I never said I didn't love him. She's like, it broke me because I liked having that type of open sex that we had with people, the rules and everything. And for him to go and do that to me, it absolutely broke my heart. And I get it. She thought she had found her person. Like, this person finally, I found someone who really gets me, accepts me. And then they go and pull the stunt that he pulled. And so it broke her. She's like, but I still love him. She's like, I want my child to have their father in their life, and I also want my kid to have access to those millions of dollars. She's like, I'm not going to make that kind of money in a lifetime. Why should my child not have access to it? So, this is why I said if you're going to make a decision, you make the decision and stop trying to convince her not to do it based on what you think she deserves. That's kind of where people get a little fucked up, I think, because you think she's a good person, so you believe she deserves to be loved and and all this shit. But she clearly doesn't view her life that way, right? She views it from another, like an analytical, monetary type of a way. Okay? So if that's her choice, that's what she deserves. You can't keep saying people deserve such great stuff, but they accept piss poor behavior. That's what you deserve then, because this is what you're accepting. Because you have a choice. You're making a fucking choice. So for Sydney, I'm like, you know what? That's your rationale. Okay? You want your kid, yes, to have their father in the home, but you also want for your child to have access to those millions of dollars. And if you have to suffer and not have the life you dreamed of, you'll do it as long as your kid gets the money. If that's your rationale, you cool with that, I'm cool with that. And on Olive's part, that's why I'm like, stop trying to tell her anything else. Except that this is what's going on and let it be. That's my little rant. So then Olive tells her all about what's been going on with what she's been finding out. And Sydney's like, okay, let's go to Maine. The guy's in Bangor, Maine. So she's like, let's go. Let's take a road trip. It's about a 4-hour drive. So they go to the address, huge home. Olive gets nervous. Sydney's like, you can't be nervous about a guy whose name is Pink Eye. And that, breaks the tension, and they both burst into laughter. So the wife answers the door, really pleasant woman. She, of course, is like, oh, yeah, he's in his office. She asks if they were his students, and they're like, no. And then she takes him to his office. She leaves. We find out this is Pink Eye. He hasn't heard that name in a long time. His wife doesn't know anything about his life. But we find out that the night Owen got caught, he was actually, what did he do? He had left, I think, after Owen got arrested. He decided, you know what, I need to get away from here. So he went and moved in with his grandmother in Pennsylvania, got super serious about school, got his PhD in psychology, practices, also teaches, does research, things like that. And so when Olive asked him about Nina, that's the ex-girlfriend's name, um, he has a smile on his face and he tells the story. So he says at first, Nina and Owen were really in love. They loved being around each other. But Owen, like, always wanted him to be there, and he didn't like that because he felt like a third wheel. And then he's like, Owen became obsessed with her, wanted to be around her all the time. And then Nina started to kind of pull back from him. He says he doesn't think Nina ever cheated on him, but in his mind, you know, Owen felt like, she was screwing everybody, right? And so Nina finally broke up with him. He lost it. He would call her incessantly. He went crazy. Very possessive. Olive had been wondering, like, had he always been this way, or did prison turn him into this person? And now hearing this, we kind of see he was always this person. This wasn't something that was brought on because he went to prison. And she tells him who her boyfriend is, Nicholas Crawford, and that he's suspected in the murder. And he says, Nikki? He's like, he didn't do it. He's like, I know for a fact he didn't. He's like, because Owen confessed to me that he did it. He came to me covered in blood. And she says she kind of knew it based on how he was describing that, you know, Owen's interaction with this woman. It was, she knew it was him, but I think she also needed to hear it, you know. And we find out this guy was Owen was his alibi because he had robbed a place. I'm like, everybody was robbing. And Owen was his alibi. So basically, it was, if you don't say anything, I won't say anything about you either, right? And that's how it's been ever since. So he's not going to come forward. On top of the fact, his wife doesn't know about his life before. He's not trying to go down for a robbery from all those years, you know. So it's just like, it is what it is. So she winds up, what did they do? They got a cabin and they're going to stay overnight in Maine. And, you know, she's telling her, Sydney's telling Olive, you can go to the DA, at least tell them what you find out, you know. And then they wind up spending the rest of the evening enjoying enjoying their hot cocoa. I mean, because ain't too much else you can do. I mean, you can't make him confess, right? I doubt the man has proof. So it's just kind of like, what can you do? You feel me? So we switch back to Nicholas. He's in Boston, in a penitentiary, solitary confinement. They feel that's the safest place for him because they know someone is highly likely going to try and take him out before the trial. He writes a lot of letters telling Olive, you know, what he did and what he didn't do. He winds up getting sick. He has a cold, takes a little longer to recover. He starts working out, doing like jumping jacks, push-ups, things like that, just trying to pass the time by. He has his visions again of their life together, by the sea with their baby and the kitten Solly and maybe even some chickens. And then he goes back to the thought again of, what if it really was her who turned me in? So Olive goes to the DA, tell him what she knows. DA, I think his last name's Keenan. He looks at her like he could care less. Pretty much kicks her out of his office. She's like, you know, you didn't take any notes. He's like, I made mental notes. You can go. I have work to do. His assistant comes in and tells her, you can either leave by yourself or we'll call security. So she's on her way out. A paralegal named Meredith stops her and she says, you know, she's been following the case. She's listened to all the podcasts and she wants to talk to her. And she says, you know, I know Nicholas Crawford didn't do this. So Meredith I can't talk. Meredith lets her know that the reason why the DA isn't trying to get any new information is because this is a huge case. This is a re-election year. And if he fumbles this case, he knows he's going to be the laughingstock and he's not going to get reelected. So this makes her upset because she's like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, about freaking politics, you know? And she's afraid, you know, they're going to let him down. She said Nicholas' lawyer, she's just as useless. It's like she doesn't give a crap. So her and Meredith have a good conversation. She tell Meredith all she knows. Meredith was like, I suspected it was Owen because he was the ex-boyfriend. And apparently there's some DNA that could be introduced that would excuse me, that would prove Nicholas is innocent, but they won't look at it. But they have come up with a little plan, or shall we say Meredith done come up with a plan. And Meredith is like, if you can get Owen's DNA, she has friends in the lab that she can test it. And then that way they can find out the truth. So Olive is going to fly back to California. And Sydney tries to talk her out of it, but she's like, I gotta try. I have to try. She goes back to California, well, Palm Springs in particular, Josephine, her actual mother, picks her up. They talk. There's a lot she wants to say to her. She even wants to be able to call her mom, but she doesn't say any of it. She just blinks back a tear or two. Her and Josephine spend some time together. She tells Josephine everything. The only thing she hasn't told her basically is like the whole paying off the debt and how, her and Nicholas were working together. That's the part she doesn't tell her. Josephine is like, that is such a fascinating story. And she's like, you should consider writing. And she's thinking like, I don't know. She's like, yeah, I love to read, but I don't know if I can do it. And Josephine is just very encouraging to her that, this is something you really could do. Josephine drops her off to go see Owen. And Josephine, of course, is like, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. She's like, it's okay to fail. And she's like, no, I can do this. There's too much writing on this. I can do it. So she pushes through, and she goes in. She sees Owen eventually. She basically says to him, why did you do that to me? He says to her, you think I'm stupid? He goes, I know why you're here. She starts to freak out a little bit on the inside, but she can't show it. He thinks that she's there because she's trying to get him to confess to what he did at Josephine's home. And that makes her feel better because it's like, okay, good. He doesn't know that I'm on to him. So she says to him how things used to be. They were like best friends and all this type of stuff. And she's like, the letters you wrote me, were they not true? And he says, of course they were true. And he's like, I miss you too. And she's like, I'm getting some water. You want some? He says, no. So she's like, shoot, I waited too soon. I should have let him talk more, let him get parched, and then he would have taken it. So she goes to get the water, and then he says, could you get me some too? So she gets him some water, and she promises to, it's time for the visit to end. She promises him, when he asks, are you going to come and visit me again? She says yes, but it's a lie. And he takes the cup with him, and he's about to walk away. So she starts to freak out inside again. And she's like, shoot, what am I going to do? But then he throws it in the garbage by the vending machine. So she says to the guard, I haven't eaten all day. Can I just get some M&Ms out of the vending machine? And he's like, sure, go ahead. So she's able to get that cup out of the garbage and get out of there with the evidence. It's been about 2 weeks. Meredith calls her. We find out the DNA is a match in both cases. So he killed both of them. He took out David and Nina. So the person works in the lab. They can't use these results because, this is tampering with evidence. So what they've got to do is try and convince the DA to actually run and do this DNA testing without revealing what they've already done. So Olive goes to see Nancy, Nicholas's attorney, and she's like, you told me all this before. Like, what are you not saying? She's like, if I tell you something, I don't want to get in trouble for it. So Nancy's like, well, you can't get in trouble for it if you tell it to me and I'm your lawyer. So she pulls out the paper for her to sign. Olive gives her 4 quarters because that's all the cash she had on her. And that's the payment. And so she tells her what she's done. Well, Nancy's, she's happy that she now knows for a fact she's representing an innocent man. But she's like, we got to treat this real delicate, in order to push for this DNA testing and prove that Owen is the actual killer. So she also tells her Nicholas has been transferred again. He's now, he's back in Boston. So Nancy goes to see Nicholas and she tells him what's been going on. He finally knows that it wasn't Olive who led the FBI out there to him, and that gives him such a sense of relief. And to also know that she has been fighting to get him out of there this whole time. It's just overwhelming his heart She went through all of that to help him, and so she's finally able to see him. They can't touch because he's behind the plexiglass, but she's upset because there's some bad news. The Meredith girl got fired. The Robert Bortham guy, aka Pink Eye, he's retracting his statement. He doesn't want to work. He's not cooperating. So she's just like, everything is just falling apart, and he just tells her it's gonna be okay. We find out that Meredith didn't get fired because she got found out about the tampering. Okay, it was because she kept pressuring DA Keenan to do the DNA testing, and he got pissed off and he fired her. So she's trying to think of some kind of way to help. So she winds up going to the police station, Olive Ass does, trying to talk to the Dockery guy. He was one of the police officers that came after the questioning about a guy that was there that they found in the river. The guy knew Nicholas. So we find out Dockery got killed like 2 weeks ago, and apparently it was some 15-year-old that shot him and then torched the car to cover up the evidence. But the guy, his partner, was like accusing Olive of like, would you happen to know anything about this? Like, and one of the other police officers had to let her know, listen, he's still, he's in a bad way, you know, disregarding pretty much. So now she, of course, is thinking like, okay, what else can I do? So Olive goes to try and see Nicholas again, but they tell her, he's not seeing any visitors. She leaves. She's so distraught. She's hurt. Everything, it has just fallen apart. She eats a bunch of junk food and just cries. She goes back to her apartment and there's someone there. It's freaking Nicholas. And she's like, what are you doing here? How are you here? She's like, did you escape? And she's thinking that's probably why the guards, you know, said, he wasn't available, So she's thinking he done escaped prison. So he tells her, no, I didn't escape. They released me. Apparently what's been going on is there was an investigation going on into the DA's office for corruption. And so Nancy was able to convince the new DA to go ahead with that DNA testing. So now they know Owen is the killer and they're going after him. And so after that, they kiss, they have this nice hard fuck. And then later on, there's a knock on the door and it's Meredith. And we find out that her and her colleagues had started noticing a couple of years ago a difference in D.A. Keenan. And at first they thought he was just going through like a midlife crisis. But then they were like, no, this is something else going on with him. And they started comparing notes. And eventually they had enough evidence that they gave it over. And thus the reason that there was this investigation about corruption. So they're going to have him step down, which is, what they like to let people do instead of, firing them. And the new DA is all about getting down to the truth, not trying to just convince somebody, which is so fucked up. It's a huge possibility they didn't do it, but because you want a big name and you want it to go down, you're just willing to do it. That's crazy. Um, so thankfully he's out, the new DA's in, and Nicholas got free. It's getting closer to the wedding. Sydney's further along. Her mother's pretty much taken over the wedding planning. James wasn't able to find a job in Boston, so he now has a new job in New York. And he's gone a lot. He works really long hours. And the minute I read that, I'm like, that's a lie. I don't believe that at all. Then one night, Olive insists that Sydney have dinner with her and Nicholas. She starts having horrible pain. She doesn't want to go to the hospital, but they wind up getting her to go. And her mother comes for probably like 2 seconds and was like, oh, I got to go. I have an event. The James guy never shows up. Come to find out, his ass was in Boston. He never came to the hospital. He was at a strip club. The mother never came back. And so Sydney has decided, you know what? Fuck him. I'm going to do this on my own. The wedding's off. The baby, thankfully, is going to be okay. She's having a baby girl. Um, them not being for her in this time just solidified for her that they're trash, which she's known. But sometimes people need an extra oomph of the person is a trash for them to just cut them off and let them go. And Olive is like, we'll be here to help you. I'm excited to be an auntie. Everything's gonna be okay. And the reason she knew about the fact that James was actually still in town, they thought she was asleep. They were in the room trying to whisper, Olive and Nicholas, because Nicholas had been calling James, and she overheard the conversation. So that's how she know. But I'm like, you know what? She needed to know the truth. She needed to know, because apparently him fucking in your bed wasn't enough. So maybe thankfully this was enough to let her know he don't give a shit about you. So Olive comes home one day, and Nicholas asked her to marry him. It was super sweet. He told her how much he's loved her since the first day they met. He opens the ring box. Girl doesn't even look at the ring. She just looks at him and she just says yes a million times. She finally looks at the ring and she's like, this has got to be like at least 3 carats. Like, did you spend all of your money? He's like, no. Come to find out, the painting that Owen had took, he had taken it to his mom's house. And so what Nicholas did was take a bunch of pictures of it, snuck in, and got a replica made, swapped it out for the real one, and got about 10 million for the real piece. So it's so funny because Owen probably thinks, okay, well, he probably thinks to be able to help his mom, and can't do nothing for her. And that's just how it should be, because her and him are just miserable individuals. And that's why he came from her, because he's awful too. Just awful. So he's got to face the charges in California for what he did to Olive. Then he's going to come back to Boston for the double murder charges. So he's getting everything he deserves. I love it. I just love it. You know? Him and his mom, they're just awful human beings. They're subhuman, in the words of Ariana Madix. If you know, you know. So he asked her, well, what kind of wedding do you want? So they wind up going to the courthouse. Sydney tried to, convince her to have some type of wedding, but this is what she wanted, just them. Josephine, her mother, flew in on the red eye the night before, and they have a nice ceremony, just them. And we fast forward a year and a half later, she's pregnant. Her and Nicholas both love swimming. That's their thing. She's got about a month to go before she has the baby, and we find out that she is a writer. And I love it. She's living her dream, and Nicholas got his dream too. And that's how it ends. So I absolutely love that. I thought that was a befitting thing. I don't know. The only thing I kind of wish that maybe she had started writing a little earlier, and maybe we could have saw a little more development with that. Because I felt like when she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do, she was passionate about books. So it would have been nice to kind of see more of that. But I'm still happy that that's what she's doing with her life. She's doing something she absolutely loves. So I love this series. I thought it was so good. What did you guys think? I tell you, I really didn't know until that last book that Owen was a whole killer. Like, I really thought that he believed that Nicholas did it, but he really didn't know, right? That's what I thought. Not that the whole time he done took this woman out, done took out the David guy to try and pin it on Nicholas because he was mad that Nicholas slept with a girl, but she had dumped him. So she didn't cheat on him. She dumped him because of his behavior. But she was actually going to go back to him. And he fucked it up. And so he took her out. So I'm like, oh my gosh. But I thought it was a really good read. I had a conflicting emotions with the main character, Olive. She was cool in the first probably 3 books, and then 4 and 5 she pissed me off. But she redeemed herself in book 6. So let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comments section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links will be available down below as well. If you have any suggestions, put those in the comments as well, and I'll look into possibly doing them. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I'll at least look into possibly looking at those books. I truly do thank you all for your support. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club. Make sure you like and subscribe.